Rapunzel. The tower stood deep in the forest, far from roads and far from curious eyes. Only a small window high above, where sometimes a light could be seen. In that tower lived Rapunzel. She did not remember another home. As long as she could remember, her world had been that room. A woman cared for her and always said the same thing, that this place kept her safe and that outside there were dangers Rapunzel was not ready for. The world is too big, the woman would say, and you are safe here. Rapunzel listened because she had nothing to compare those words to. Her days passed in singing, arranging small things, and watching the trees change with the seasons. Every day, at the same time, the woman came beneath the tower and called for Rapunzel to lower her hair. That was the only way anyone could enter or leave the tower. Rapunzel didn't ask many questions. And though she didn't say it out loud, the same thought returned again and again. If there is a place that keeps you safe, there should also be a place you can one day go toward. As time passed, Rapunzel began noticing things that once felt completely natural. Every day began the same way, and every evening ended with the woman's voice calling from below. "Why doesn't the tower have a door?" she asked one evening as she combed her long hair. The woman paused for a moment, then continued arranging her things as if the question did not matter. "Because you don't need one," she replied. "Everything you need is here." Rapunzel didn't insist. She had learned to accept answers as they came. Her gaze went back to the window, to the trees and the sky, which looked different every day. "And why can't I go down?" she asked a little later. The woman smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. "Outside isn't for you," she said. "People can be bad." Rapunzel nodded, but the questions did not disappear. She began to notice how quickly the woman always came and went, how she never stayed long, and how she never spoke about life beyond the forest. "Have you ever been outside with me?" Rapunzel asked softly. The woman looked at her seriously. "I know what it is like out there," she said, "and that is enough." That night, after she was alone again, Rapunzel sat at the window and watched the light shift. One afternoon, when the sun was high and the air warm, Rapunzel sat by the window and hummed. But this time, something was different. When she stopped singing, she heard a sound she didn't recognize. It wasn't leaves. It wasn't birds. It was a voice, far below, trying to understand where the melody was coming from. Rapunzel leaned out slightly and listened. And that made her feel excited and frightened at the same time. She had never heard another voice besides the woman who came to her. "Is someone up there?" the voice called, clearer now. Rapunzel stepped back. She remembered the words she had heard for so long, that outside was not safe and she should not speak to strangers. And yet her curiosity was stronger than her fear. I'm here," she answered quietly without showing herself. A short pause followed. "I don't want to scare you," the voice said. "I just heard your song." Rapunzel thought no one had ever heard her voice except the tower walls. "I live here," she said after a moment. "Always?" "In the tower?" the voice asked, surprised. "But how do you come down?" Rapunzel didn't answer. When the voice faded and the forest became quiet again, Rapunzel stayed at the window for a long time. A new idea turned inside her. Maybe the world wasn't as far as she had been told. After that day, Rapunzel began to wait. She didn't know exactly what she was waiting for, but each time she went to the window, her eyes searched for movement between the trees. The forest looked the same as always, yet for her, it was no longer only a view. The next day, just before sunset, she heard the familiar voice again. "Are you there?" it asked softly. Rapunzel smiled, though no one could see her. "I'm here," she replied, and she leaned closer to the window. "I thought I imagined it," the voice said, "but your song came again." Rapunzel hesitated, then chose to speak honestly. "I have no one to talk to," she said, "except the woman who comes to me." Silence for a moment. "My name is," the voice began, and he introduced himself. "And you?" "Rapunzel," she said. "I've lived here for as long as I can remember." "Are you alone?" "Not completely," she replied, "but almost." Their talk was brief but different from anything Rapunzel knew. She listened and imagined those things like parts of a story. When night came, the voice left, and Rapunzel stayed at the window for a long time. Something new had appeared in her heart, not fear, but a desire to know more. She didn't notice that far away, between the trees, someone was watching. The woman who always came to her had heard the voice. And she understood there was now a secret in the tower that no longer belonged to her. That same evening, the woman climbed the braid as she always did. "Today you sang longer," she said as she set down her basket. "Your voice carried far." Rapunzel nodded. She sat by the window and didn't rush to answer. "Someone heard me," she said calmly. The woman froze for a moment, then smiled, a tense smile. "In the forest, echoes often mislead," she said. "Not everything you hear is a person." Rapunzel turned toward her. "It was a person," she said. "We talked." Silence filled the room. The woman set the basket down and stepped closer. "That must not happen," she said, sharper than usual. "You know nothing about the world outside." "That's why I ask," Rapunzel replied. "Why can't I ever go down?" The woman looked at her for a long time as if searching for the right words. "Because I protect you," she said at last. "Outside is not a place for you." "And how do you know?" Rapunzel asked. "Have you been there?" That question changed something. The woman turned away quickly and began arranging her things without answering at once. "Don't ask such questions," she said. "They only bring worries." But Rapunzel's worry was already there, not because she had heard something terrible, but because for the first time she felt the answers she received were incomplete. When the woman left, Rapunzel remained alone, looking down at the forest. She no longer wondered whether the world existed. She wondered when she would be allowed to see it. That night, Rapunzel couldn't fall asleep quickly. She stood and went to the window. For the first time, Rapunzel allowed herself to imagine what it would feel like to step down, to feel the ground beneath her feet, to see the trees not from high above but up close. "Just to look," she whispered, "nothing more." It wasn't a wish to run away, it was curiosity. Rapunzel began noticing things she had never paid attention to. In her mind, an idea appeared, at first like a game. The next day, when the voice in the forest returned, Rapunzel didn't begin with her usual words. "If someone wants to come down from a high place, how would they do it?" Silence below for a moment. "With a rope," the voice answered. "Or with a ladder. Why do you ask?" Rapunzel smiled without explaining. "I'm just imagining," she said. The plan still wasn't real. It was only a thought forming slowly, like a drawing that doesn't yet have all its lines. But for Rapunzel, it was enough. She no longer felt trapped only by the walls, because in her mind a path had appeared. After that, the conversations between Rapunzel and the voice became more frequent. "Today I saw deer by the river," the voice said. She liked these talks because they didn't make her feel afraid and they didn't make her feel obligated. Slowly she began to trust, without noticing the exact moment it happened. One day she leaned farther out the window and saw him for the first time. "Now I know you're not only a voice," she said. "And now I know you're not only a song," he replied. Rapunzel laughed and then quickly covered her mouth as if startled by her own laughter. "Don't tell anyone I'm here," he said. "I won't," she promised. "And I have secrets too." She didn't say what they were, but she knew she was no longer completely alone with her thoughts. Trust didn't come suddenly. It arrived quietly, growing when words are honest and no one rushes. When night fell, he left, and Rapunzel stayed by the window a long time. She felt her world expanding, not because the tower had changed, but because she had begun to look beyond it. One evening the woman came later than usual, and this time her voice was sharper, impatient. "Rapunzel, let down your hair," she called. Rapunzel leaned out as always. When the woman entered, her eyes didn't go to Rapunzel's face. They went to her hair, slightly disturbed, as if it had recently been used. "You've grown heavy," the woman said. "Your hair wasn't like this yesterday." Rapunzel hesitated. She wasn't ready for that question. "Maybe it grew more," she answered uncertainly. The woman stared at her for a long moment without speaking. Then she began walking around the room, searching as if for traces. "Is something happening that you're not telling me?" she asked. Rapunzel took a breath. For the first time, she didn't want to lie. "I sang," she said, "and someone heard me." Her words fell heavily into the silence. The woman turned sharply. "I told you not to speak to anyone," she said. "Outside there are people who don't understand how vulnerable you are." "But I'm not vulnerable when I speak," Rapunzel replied. "I feel alive." The woman stepped closer and grabbed the braid harder than necessary. "You belong here," she said, "and that will not change." Rapunzel didn't scream, but tears filled her eyes, not from pain, but from the realization that the truth could no longer be put back. When the woman left, Rapunzel stayed alone in the tower with the feeling that her secret no longer protected her. But together with fear came a determination she had never felt before. After that night, Rapunzel no longer looked at the tower the same way. She stood for a long time at the window and looked down at the ground she had never touched. When the voice in the forest returned, Rapunzel didn't begin with small talk. "I want to go down," she said, "at least once." Silence below. Then, calmly, he answered, "It isn't easy, but it's possible." Rapunzel looked at her long hair and understood that what had always been a way for someone else to reach her could become a way for her to reach the world. "Will you help me?" she asked. "I'll be here," he said. "I'll tell you how." They talked for a long time without hurrying. Rapunzel listened and imagined every step until fear slowly stepped aside and made room for courage. When their talk ended, she was alone again, but she didn't feel trapped. The decision had been made not as rebellion, but as a need to know who she was beyond the walls. That night, Rapunzel fell asleep with the thought that morning could bring something entirely new. Morning came quieter than usual. Rapunzel woke early and stood at the window as she did every day, only now the view below looked both near and impossible. She breathed in and remembered the words she had heard, trying not to think of everything at once. When the voice returned, it was calm and steady. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes," Rapunzel said, "at least to try." She began to lower her long hair carefully, checking that it was secure. Her heart beat hard, not from fear, but from excitement. For the first time, she was doing something no one had allowed. Slowly, the voice said from below, "And don't look down." Rapunzel held her hair and placed one foot outside the window. In that moment, everything seemed to go quiet: birds, leaves, even her own thoughts. She felt the tower wall beneath her hands and took another careful step. With each movement, the tower stayed higher behind her and the ground came closer. When her feet finally touched the earth, Rapunzel said nothing at first. She knelt and touched the grass as if she needed proof it was real. "I did it," she whispered. He smiled and stepped back to give her space. Rapunzel stood and looked around. This first step was not an escape. Rapunzel walked slowly between the trees because every step felt new. She stopped often to touch the bark, to smell the earth, to look around as if she wanted to remember everything. "Is this what the world looks like?" she asked. "This is only a small part," he said. "There is much more." Rapunzel smiled, not from politeness, but from joy that she could finally see things up close. They reached a small clearing where sunlight warmed the grass and made everything feel quiet and bright. Rapunzel sat for a moment and breathed deeply. "I didn't know it could be so simple," she said. "No one frightened me here." "Sometimes fear comes from what we don't know," he replied, "and you're starting to know." Rapunzel looked toward the tower, visible between the trees. "I have to go back," she said after a moment, "but not forever." "I'll wait when you decide," he said. Rapunzel stood and looked around one more time to memorize the feeling. She knew that after this meeting she would never be the same because the world had become real. When Rapunzel returned to the tower, everything looked the same, but the feeling was different. The walls hadn't changed. The window was still there. That evening, the woman came as usual, but Rapunzel met her differently. "You look different," the woman said. Rapunzel answered quietly, "I saw the world." Silence. The woman understood that words could not turn time back. "I protected you," she said more softly than usual. "I know," Rapunzel replied. "But now it's time I learned to take care of myself." The next day, Rapunzel didn't wait for anyone to tell her what to do. She lowered her hair, climbed down, and did not look back in fear, only with gratitude for what she had learned, even the hard way. The forest received her calmly. The world was not perfect and not always safe, but it was real. And that was enough. Rapunzel did not choose escape. She chose her path. And so the story ended not with a tower collapsing, but with a door that finally opened.